I'm just giving it a minute for everybody to sign on. It seems like they're coming on now. Okay, let's begin. Thank you everybody for attending our second webinar for Radical Days. I just want to take a minute and thank RAD and all the community garden sponsors that help us in the community garden program at the Conservancy, and we will begin our stormwater presentation right now. So just some quick introductions. I am Art DeMeo. I'm the Director of Community Green Space Services for the Community Gardens and Green Space Program of the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy. And when I am done with my introduction, Maura Fielden, our Community Green Space Services Manager, will take over and give everybody kind of some descriptions of our stormwater projects in progress. But first, just some explanations and some background. Our community garden program is 130 gardens in 20 different counties. A lot of you have seen them at the tunnels here in Pittsburgh and at major gateways, Fort Pitt Tunnel being our flagship. And 90 or so of the gardens are here in Allegheny County. So this is kind of very an Allegheny County presentation, so we'll be discussing a lot of those projects within the county. All our gardens have some level of community involvement. If it is not volunteer-based, it is funding-based, but we can't do what we do without the community and our volunteer base. So obviously the COVID-19 has added some changes to our volunteers, but we did have a good volunteer year this year given the time. So I thank you to all our volunteers. If you're a volunteer and watching, we could not do what we do without that. Just some before and afters here of kind of what we do. So since 1998, we've been taking these blighted spaces and changing them into green spaces with flower displays. This is one of our older sites here where we've taken, you know, a vacant lot and transformed that into a colorful display. But in the years past, we've kind of said to ourselves, these sites could be doing more, and a growing issue in the city of Pittsburgh and Allegheny County has been the stormwater issue. So we've taken a hard look at our sites to kind of see if we can be doing more at these sites to help with the stormwater issue. So for those who don't know what the stormwater issue is, let's think about that explanation here just for a quick minute. So watersheds, what is a watershed? This is the city of Pittsburgh. Here's a quick explanation of what a watershed is. Basically, any water you see during the day is your watershed. So from the rain to the rivers to stuff going on underground that you don't even know about. Lakes, ponds, that all makes up your watershed and affects your day-to-day greatly because, you know, without water, we could not be here on this planet. So one major problem that the city of Pittsburgh has, and a lot of cities have, is a combined sewer system. So for those who don't know what a combined sewer system is, that the sewer system that handles the stormwater when it rains and the sewer system that handles the sewage from your home and businesses is one system. And in normal everyday function, it can handle the sewage from your house and businesses to a sewage treatment plant that treats that and then lets it go into the system. But during heavy rains, what happens is that the system cannot handle that amount of water, and the whole thing is just pumped right into the river. So the very expensive solution to this is creating two different stormwater systems, a system that maintains your rainwater when it rains separately from the one that deals with the waste from your house and businesses. But that is extremely expensive and not the way the city of Pittsburgh was set up. Also, when you look at what we call gray infrastructure, because of all the concrete used, it's really just taking that pollution and moving it to a different place. And it is allowing us to treat it separately, but still it's a lot of construction and gray concrete that would have to be added. One solution that we think is a much better solution is the green solution and what we call green infrastructure. So green infrastructure allows the water to be used by plant material and allows you to allows this natural ecosystem to take up that water and use it. And that's why green infrastructure is a much better solution to deal with this pollution that we're trying to take out of the rivers. So the city of Pittsburgh is in a unique situation right now. The city of Pittsburgh obviously has to deal with this problem. The United States government has kind of mandated that. But everything is lining up for us to deal with this problem in a green way. So community members like yourselves have been more conscious of the issue and want to come up with a solution. There is funding now available through federal and state agencies to deal with this and allow us to add green space where we can. And we have organizations such as ourselves ready to start doing that. So one last slide before we go into the different projects the Conservancy is doing for stormwater. It's a slide of the watersheds, the different watersheds in Allegheny County. If you're sitting in Allegheny County right now, you can see what watershed you're in and how they're all very much interlinked. And how one watershed affects another watershed, and really and truthfully, everything we do affects the water that is around us. So this is a good way to be conscious of what we're doing. So I'm going to turn it over to Maura Fielden now, and she will begin to discuss the different projects we are doing.
Okay, thank you, Art. So due to some technical difficulties with my computer, it would appear that I am Art DeMeo right now, but indeed it is I, Maura Fielden. I'm going to talk about 4 different projects that we've completed in a few different watersheds. So the first is going to be in Millvale, Pennsylvania, which is just northeast of the city of Pittsburgh. It takes place in the Gertie's Run watershed. And this project is a little bit older. This was one of our first really big green infrastructure projects. It was funded by Penvest in 2012, and it helped us to install 1 large bioswale and 1 smaller rain garden on the campus of the Sisters of St. Francis. So both of these projects actually take place on their property. So this was a big partnership with the sisters and also the Millvale. Funding was received in 2012, and a lot of the design phase took place in 2012. Implementation began in 2013, so that kind of gives you guys a little bit of a timeline. A lot of people ask what the difference between a bioswale and a rain garden is, and essentially the bioswale is more tied into the storm sewer system, whereas a rain garden is a more passive system. So, let's see here. So this is kind of an overview of the parking lot rain garden. Essentially, it takes the runoff from the campus directly. So just north of the parking lot of the rain garden is the parking lot. And just north of that parking lot is one of the biggest buildings on the campus. We were actually able to take the downspout from that building and tie it directly into this rain garden. So it's able to receive 100% of the stormwater, rainwater that falls on that large building on campus. This is a before photo, kind of looking up at where the rain garden was installed. This red brick road is the driveway. So normally water would cascade from the upper parking lot over this space and down the driveway. And so we were trying to capture all of that in addition to the runoff from the building. This is a couple construction photos, and you can see a lot of the pavers and other material being installed. The photo on the right actually shows the overflow where if and when the rain garden fills up with too much stormwater, it actually cascades down over that beautiful little rock waterfall area, and looks very natural, and it's really fun to see. So this is kind of an after photo. So on the far side of the image, you can kind of see the outlet to that overflow that I was just showing in the previous slide. The first time it rained after this was installed, all the sisters came out from the building and were taking pictures because it looked like a little pond, and then they were very sad when the next day all the water was gone. But we tried to explain that's exactly what it's here for, to capture all of that storm water and allow it to filter back into the ground, whereas normally it would be flooding their parking lot and cascading down the hill to the borough of Millvale property and into people's yards and homes. So this one was working really well. It's designed to handle a 1-inch rainstorm event. So anything over that, it would then overflow out of the system and naturally cascade down the hillside as it would have if the rain garden weren't there. This has 1 tree in it, a magnolia tree, about 25 shrubs, and about 100 perennials were planted, all native plants. The bioswale, the second element to this project, is on Hawthorne Road, which is the road leading up to the campus. It's about 390 feet in length, so it's kind of hard to show this thing in images on a webinar. You have to go see it for yourself, but it follows the road for almost 400 feet on an 8% slope. It was a very large area that was prior just grass. So you can see some before images here along the roadway. The image on the left is the upper section. The image on the right is the lower section where you can see this old storm sewer and where all of the water from this area would try to drain to, which a lot of water comes down this hillside. It's actually an 11-acre tributary area that flows through here. So you can see a couple construction photos here. This is specifically showing a weir, which is an element that was constructed into the bioswale to help slow stormwater flow. And that really was beneficial because the water can come down here pretty quickly. Here's an after photo of some of our educational signage recognizing all of the partners. There was 9 trees, couple hundred perennials, and about a dozen shrubs planted in this space, again, all native. Here's a couple more after photos. Our very first spring after installing this bioswale, we found a little baby deer nesting. The mama left it there for the morning while she was going to feed. And so it really resonated with me personally because this was a grassy mowed lawn, and now we're able to recreate this natural space that kind of mimics a stream channel, and the wildlife in the area was able to use it a lot more than they were previously. So that was really magical that day. We tried not to disrupt the baby deer when we were there checking on things. So Art kind of mentioned earlier our community engagement element to our program. This is very important to the success of any project we do. In my opinion, the most important element and the most fun. So we actually did a ribbon cutting ceremony. The borough closed down the street for us. A lot of the sisters from the St. Francis campus came down. The engineer, community members, local elected officials, borough representatives, everybody was there and to do a little ceremony. And Sister Donna, you can see there in the foreground, did a little blessing on the bioswale with a hemlock branch, which is our state tree, and some water from Gertie's Run, and had a little prayer for us that morning. So it was a really magical event there. We also, there used to be a summer camp there for students to participate in the summer in a bunch of different activities, and we did an educational activity with the students took them to the bioswale when it was still under construction. And we asked them to draw us a picture from what they learned that day of what a bioswale would look like and what they think. And you can see in the top left image, a young girl drew a bunch of native plants and a car and some pollution, and showing how that system was helping to clean the campus. Maintenance, we undertook that. Part of the funding for this was WPC oversaw the maintenance for the first few years to make sure the plant's established. We then developed a maintenance plan and worked with the Sisters of St. Francis staff to show them ultimately what to do long-term, you know, removing the leaves from the catch basins and pruning anything that might need it, weeds, weed identification, plant identification, what to leave in the space. So they've been maintaining it for years and doing really well. And we still go back annually and just help some of the community members that want to participate and get things looking good. So that was a very successful project. We promised that we wanted to show you guys some of the plants that are in these projects that you can take back home with you to use in your own spaces. If you have any wet areas at home or areas with high erosion, Itea sweetspire here is a really good one for that. It has a really dense root system. It absorbs a lot of water. These are all native plants that do well within these stormwater projects. There's a really nice color to it in the fall as well, and cool looking flowers for the springtime. Another one was foam flower that was used here. So the Millville sites are very shaded. There's a lot of overstory in the canopy. So this is a more shade tolerant plant, native, great for pollinators, and it spreads via rhizomes, so it will fill in a space pretty well. Another one we used was bleeding heart. Really pretty plant. The sisters were really interested to have this on the campus. And it's also deer resistant, which was really important as their campus was pretty wooded. The next project I'm going to talk about is the Carnegie Green parking lots. So another project that kind of had two elements to it. This takes place in Carnegie, Pennsylvania, in the Chartiers Creek watershed. We received funding from PennVest for this in 2015. So the borough actually received the funds and then administered those to the various companies that were working. WPC acted as the project manager for this. So we kind of did an initial assessment of Carnegie. We have a lot of other projects that WPC was already doing in the borough, and we were able to identify two main parking lots to focus on. Focusing on, like Art was saying, a lot of pavement and things that don't really allow water to infiltrate back to the aquifers naturally. So we identified all these large impervious surfaces and selected two, the West Main Street parking lot and the East Main Street parking lot. So there's West Main and East Main. And you notice that these are saddled on either side of the Chartiers Creek. So that was a pretty important element, actually able to see the body of water from these parking lots that we were retrofitting to help intercept stormwater. There was a lot of engineering that went into this. We were able to see the flow patterns of the water when they hit the surface to try to plan how to capture it best. Here's a couple of before images. So you can see a lot of pavement, not a lot of greenery. There were some trees in the parking lot. Over time, they were the wrong tree for those sites and had to be removed. They were causing a little bit of damage to some of the concrete. So thanks to PennVest, we were able to completely retrofit both of these parking lots. Here's just kind of a conceptual plan based off of how the space was used. This is in the business district of Carnegie, so a lot of foot traffic, and we wanted to make sure that the space was functional for the residents there. There's some construction photos. So you can see a lot of heavy lifting. This is creating the actual planting beds where the water would flow to. You can kind of see some of the storm drains, which are slightly elevated from the planting beds, so that if the planting beds are not able to receive all the water, it would just overflow back into the storm sewer system as it would as if we were never there. This is an image of us doing a percolation test. So essentially this is digging a hole, soaking it, filling it again with water, and monitoring how quickly the water flows through. This was an important element just to make sure that everything from the engineered soil to how we constructed where the curb cuts were to intercept that stormwater, just to make sure everything was working properly before finishing the project. And fortunately, everything was flowing just as it should. Here's an image of the West Main Street parking lot. We put some permeable pavers over there, so trying to remove some more of that asphalt where cars are driving and allowing water to infiltrate through this permeable paver area. This lot is, the West Main lot is about half the size as the East Main lot. The tributary area for the West Main lot, the smaller one, is about 15,000 square feet, and we had about 3,600 square feet of planting space within it. Here's the planting plan for that West Main parking lot, just to give you guys an idea. So you can see these larger circles are the trees. I think there was about 50 trees between the two parking lots and hundreds of perennials and shrubs. So a lot of planting went into that, all native plants. We sent a lot of letters out to the businesses prior to construction, just so that people knew what was going on. The more communication, the better with these projects, where we gave them, some resources if they wanted to find out more information. Some of those businesses actually came out on planting day, which you see depicted here. All of the plantings were done with volunteers. Carnegie Borough has a really active shade tree commission. So great partners were in place. And you can see one of our staff showing everybody how to properly plant the perennials in this area and the trees. Just another image, you can see bodies everywhere. A couple more here. And again, this was all planted with volunteers, which was really great. It's an after image of the East Main Street parking lot. As I mentioned, this lot is double the size of the West Main, so it is about 48,000 square feet, and the planting area was almost 6,000 square feet. And just a couple more after images. Now, the parking lots in Carnegie are not monitored. The ones in Millville actually had a monitoring system in place that we were able to prove that Millville was intercepting 89% of the stormwater that flowed through that area. Carnegie, unfortunately, is not monitored. It's a bit of a difficult system to monitor, but the way it was designed and from some calculations from the engineer, it's about 250,000 gallons of stormwater a year that it intercepts, is what we believe. A couple more images of the perennials filling in the following year. You can see, I'll discuss some of these soon, but the trees are service berries. There's some irises and other shrubs and things that you can see here. So the service berries are a great tree. They don't get too tall. They have a really nice flower in the spring, nice color in the fall, and they are salt tolerant. So with all of these sites, you have to consider stormwater in the wintertime and the amount of road salt and other salt from the sidewalks that is going to melt and flow into these basins. So we want to make sure the plants can handle that. St. John's wort was another one that we use. It's a deciduous shrub, but it has a really nice bloom throughout the summer. It's a pretty hardy plant, and it did really well here at the parking lots. And one of my favorites is sneezeweed. Bees, butterflies love it. It likes moist soils, but it can also handle drought as well. So this is a really pretty one that fills in nicely and blooms all summer. Okay, the third project I'm going to talk about is our Center and Heron bioswale. This is the city's largest bioswale. It's in the Hill District, which is in the Allegheny River watershed. Essentially, this was a site that was an existing community flower garden that was created in the early 1990s. And again, this is at the intersection of Heron Avenue and Center Avenue in the Hill District. And as Art mentioned earlier, we're thinking of ways that these vacant lots that we've transformed into these beautiful gardens can do a little bit more, especially when you think about stormwater. So we received a Google grant a few years ago to survey some of our garden sites in the city. And Center and Heron was identified as one of the best for capturing stormwater. So you can kind of see a screenshot of all the technical stuff that I'm not well versed on. But essentially this was a site that we had a high interest in retaining some of that stormwater from this Hill District neighborhood. So it's about a 1.2 acre area, the actual bioswale itself. It drains a 4-acre area. It's estimated to capture over 1 million gallons of stormwater each year. PWSA and Alcosan are the leading funders in this project. So there's a GROW grant from Alcosan and capital funds from PWSA. They knew that we had already had a garden in this area, and it was a great partnership. And we worked to install this. Here's just some of the construction drawings. We were ready to get moving. In the winter of 2017 to 2018, we were able to start construction. You can actually see how much runoff and erosion just from one rain event, how it affected this hillside and how much water was coming through here. It eroded a lot of the engineered soil here before we could finish construction. Here's a couple more images from the construction, a couple more weirs, as I mentioned earlier, with the Millvale project that are being installed. So you see these little concrete barriers that help to slow and cascade the water through the site. We started in the spring of 2018 installing the perennials and trees. Again, this is an engineered soil, so it allows for better infiltration. So there's a lot more sand and things like that in it. Here are some of the community volunteers. Pitt campus is right above where this is. So we are able to work with the university, local residents to plant. It took us many days to plant all of the plants. There were 25 trees, 150 shrubs, and I think 13 or 14,000 perennials that went into this site. Again, all native plants. It's another phase of the planting. You can see here some of the river rock that was installed throughout the channel. So that really helps to slow the water as well and allow it to filter back into the ground, clean out those pollutants, and then ultimately get back into the aquifer. Normally what would happen is the water would flow down the pavement, go into the storm sewer system, and overflow directly into our rivers. So with that, it's carrying all the pollution. It doesn't have this opportunity to slow and infiltrate into the ground naturally. So that's why these systems are really important. Just one more image of when it was completely planted. You can see the plants filling in nicely. You can see that constructed weir, which helps to slow the flow of water. Again, WPC undertook initial maintenance to make sure all the plants were established well. We had a lot of volunteer events, just watering the perennials. Believe it or not, they need water in the stormwater site the first couple years, just until they get their roots out and can fend for themselves. And so we had a really high success rate with the plants here. We had a ribbon cutting event. You can see representatives from the mayor's office, PWSA, Alcosan, and the Conservancy present. And here's another after image of the base of the bioswale along the sidewalk there. Couple more images of the plants filling in. So not only are these sites functional, but they're really pretty. A lot better than having just mowed grass or a pavement sidewalk. Long-term with maintenance, we're working with PWSA. They have seasonal work crews on site. Pitt campus, they help to maintain the hillside above. There's a lot of knotweed on the hillside, and anybody that's tried to battle it, it's a battle worth fighting, but it's a very hard battle. So Pitt University goes in mechanically a couple times throughout the summer and knocks that back so that it doesn't seed down into the bioswale and further spread throughout the space. Like I mentioned, PWSA has seasonal work crews out. And then the Conservancy, we have annual volunteer events. We work with Pitt a lot on that for their days of service. Other residents, all of our community flower gardens have a garden steward. So that's a representative or multiple representatives that live in a community, and they are kind of our eyes and ears. We have 130 of these gardens, so they let us know if anything is alarming in the site, if there's any pests or disease issues or otherwise. So this is an image of one of our stewards that helped out with the site a lot. And they're just there every day helping to weed and make the space look nice. A couple more images here, some of the plants. So this is switchgrass that kind of filled in the lowest part at the base of the bioswale. Switchgrass has a really dense dynamic root system, so that helps with filtration of the water and cleaning out the pollutants from the water. So that all looks good. You can see some hydrangeas in the background. Those are the white flowers, and some echinacea in the foreground there. The Conservancy has a drone, so we were able to take an overhead image after it was just finished being planted. So you can see how long this thing is. Okay, a couple of the images I mentioned, switchgrass. This does really well in extreme drought or extremely wet conditions. It's great cover for wildlife. You can kind of see a picture there of how dense their root systems are. So this allows for carbon storage. Again, allows water to better filter into the site. They can really hold their own. They're a tough plant. And birds really like to feed on the seeds as well. So all around a great plant. 9-bark is a shrub, great for erosion control. This is a really tough plant. It can do well in any type of soil you put it in, no matter how dry, wet, rocky. It's a pretty tough plant and it's native, so really great for pollinator species as well. And again, that Echinacea or coneflower, it blooms all summer. It's beautiful, great for pollinators. It's very salt tolerant. The deer don't like to eat it, so this is a great one to have around your homes. And in the wintertime, again, the birds really like to feed on the seeds, so it's a good one to leave those spent seed heads on as long as you can until the birds have a chance to eat all the seeds. And they also reseed themselves in these bioswales, so as we plant some, you can see how they really fill in the lower image here. Okay, the last one I'm going to talk about is our Lincoln and Frankstown rain garden. So this is our newest rain garden installation. It is funded by a local foundation, and also NextEra Energy gave some extra funds so we could really focus on native pollinator plants. So this one's looking really good. We're really happy with it. The partners involved were obviously the City of Pittsburgh, PWSA, as well as the Pittsburgh Public School System. And I'll get into that a little bit more here in a minute. This is in the Allegheny River watershed. It was an original community flower garden through the Conservancy on a vacant lot created in the early 1990s. This site, it's partially City of Pittsburgh land and partially Pittsburgh Public Schools. You can see a school in the background there. It had a lot of foundations and other things subsurface that were filled in. And over time, they've been settling as a lot of water was resting on this site. It was breaking down a lot of that material underground. You can kind of see how uneven the surface is here. And so we had a strong suspicion that this would be a great site for stormwater infiltration. You can see an overhead image here. Again, there's the annual garden. You can see the flowers here. The students at Lincoln Pre-K right next door would plant these every year. I actually have an image next here of the students with their parents, and we do this every June with them. So a lot of community engagement on the site and thinking about how can we make this site better and use it as an educational tool, as well as a stormwater infiltration site. So you can see a couple details here from the engineer and the construction that was about to take place. Overhead, there are 2 rain gardens that we actually installed on the site. So the northern one is the initial one that intercepts the stormwater through a curb cut, which I'll show you in another image here shortly. And if and when this first rain garden were to overflow and receive too much water, it would flow then into the next one. So it kind of has a dual system there in place. Go to the next one. You can kind of see the plant design elements here. It's color coded, but essentially we designed the plants that would do best at this site, and it's kind of planted in a couple of different zones where the lower, more recessed areas are the more flood tolerant plants. And then as you gradually go upslope from the rain garden, the plants get less and less flood tolerant and more drought tolerant. There's a couple construction photos. You can see us protecting the site while the contractor was in there, leveling the site, and all of the soil that was removed to create the rain gardens was reused to grade the site and bring it back to a nice, safe, flat surface for our residents to walk through. Some more construction images. And this was in the fall of 2019, like summer and fall of 2019, when this work was taking place. You can see our staff here. We had a tree planting at the end of 2019. We planted 8 trees here, some red buds, serviceberries, hornbeams. That was kind of our first planting. And then the hope was in the spring of 2020, we were going to plant all of the perennials with the students, as we did every year, with their parents. And unfortunately, the pandemic happened and we were unable to work with the students. And we went in as staff in the spring of 2020 to plant a couple hundred perennials within the site. Here you can see some coreopsis, some penstemon, some iris, some lobelia, and all native perennials. Our staff had a socially distanced planting in the spring of 2020 in April. You can see everybody spread out in their own little areas, planting all these hundreds of plants just to get them in the ground. This is an image of the curb cut that I mentioned earlier. So on the northern end of the site, the water would flow from the street through this curb cut and into the space through the sidewalk there. That blue pipe in the background is where the water would flow into if this rain garden were to fill up. And it would go through that pipe and go underground into the second rain garden. And that just allows for optimal infiltration of all the water that this site receives before it would, as before, go into the sewer system and rush right into the river. And you can also see river rock again here. We use a lot of rocks and boulders just to again, help with the flow of the stormwater. Maintenance we've been undertaking this year, general weeding, watering the plants again until they're established and can fend for themselves, and just taking care to make sure everything's established and filling in. This site was designed to capture a 1.5 inch rain event. So anything over that, it would just naturally overflow back into the system as it would if the rain garden were never put in place. This site is not monitored again. You can see a couple more images here, the school in the background. We really hope to engage with the school in 2021 with the students and do some more plantings. There's a lot of opportunities for educational events in the garden with the students, talking about pollinators, talking about stormwater, talking about just getting them outside and into this space and having them interact a little bit more with the natural world. A couple of the plants that were used in the site. So blazing star, this blooms in the summertime. It's a great pollinator plant, very drought tolerant. It can handle clay soil, which we have a lot of. Doesn't get too tall, really likes sunshine. So this is a great one to plant in your own yards. It's beautiful. Cardinal flower, one of my favorites. Does really well in wet soils and can handle occasional flooding. The deer don't like it, which is a plus. Great for hummingbirds and other pollinators. And hyssop or Augustaceae really enjoys the sunshine, can handle moist and dry soils, blooms all summer. Another great pollinator plant, and it really self-seeds. It'll reseed in a space and help fill up that space. So it's a good one to use if you have a limited budget. And I think that's all I have for you guys on the specifics of those 4 projects. We'll take some time for questions. And let me see if I can find the question panel. Here we go. Okay, a couple questions here. Yeah. Okay, so we have one from Steve. Hi, Steve. It's a bit of a longer question. Let me see if I can. I'm going to skip that one for the moment and get to Steve's second question that's a little bit shorter. Can you make the watershed map available as a PDF so it can be shared in the community? We absolutely can. That map is actually from the, well, Art would know it. It's the Allegheny County Watershed Alliance. I might be mispronouncing that, but it's available online if you just Google it. So yes, we can definitely make that available, and I can email you that resource a little bit later on, Steve. Susan asked, are the plant lists available for each site? That's certainly something we can share. WPC has a list of perennials that we use across our program, native plants with like different elements highlighting, you know, their bloom time and what their site condition requirements are. So that's something we can share. And we'll get your information after this, Susan. Kelly asked, what new sites will be converted into rain garden or bioswale in 2021? We have a couple irons in the fire. Stay tuned. Maybe we can do an update on this presentation in the future and share those with you guys. But we have quite a few other community flower gardens in Allegheny County that we're looking at and trying to assess which ones are best to intercept stormwater. Trish asked, is the St. Francis campus open to the public? It's a great question. It is not. But the Hawthorne Road bioswale is along Hawthorne Road leading up to the campus. So that is publicly accessible. The parking lot bioswale is technically up on their campus. You can drive through, they're very nice people and see it, but technically their campus is not open to the public. Okay, and then Steve's other question, starting a dialogue about the Pine Creek watershed and county parks. Talking about how the park is essentially a great place to have a rain garden or other stormwater projects, especially because there's the lake there. Question is, what can be done to improve and increase stormwater infiltration rates throughout the parks? Can the Conservancy survey and assess North Park? So we actually at the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy are doing a lot of county park assessments. We're trying to get through all 9 parks. I believe we have 5 or 6 of them completed, and part of that assessment is assessing where there can be stormwater projects implemented. We partner with the Allegheny County Parks Foundation and the parks themselves. So all of those plans are in the works. I think North Park, if we haven't already assessed it, it's definitely next on the list. I have to get an update from some of our other staff that work more intimately with that project, but absolutely we do identify stormwater projects within the county parks based off of our assessments, just to try to make the parks a little bit more welcoming, and then especially in terms of stormwater and other elements that we can do to improve the parks with the foundation. So great question, and that's definitely something that's in our wheelhouse, so thank you, Steve. Let me see if I have any other ones. Okay, Trish is asking, what would you estimate is the mix between straight species versus native cultivars in these projects? It's a great question, Trish, and I'm actually going to have our gardens coordinator follow up with you on that, because my background is not exactly in horticulture, but I do know there are a lot of different cultivars that we use and straight species, but I'm not 100% sure at what ratio, but that's something that we could get back to you on. I think that's the last question. Hopefully I answered those well for you guys. And if you have any other questions, you know where to find us. You can reach out to the Conservancy at any time. I'm going to leave you guys with the link to our website. It's waterlandlife.org. You can visit here to learn more about all of these projects, ways to get involved, to volunteer with us, to donate, any information that you would like. You can find us on there. If you have other questions that you think of after this presentation, feel free to reach out to us at our general info email account, and that'll get diverted to me or our other staff if you have questions. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day.